All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Abby, and welcome to African Tea Time. This is our second session this semester. If you attended the last one, we have met already, but if you didn't, I am the graduate assistant at the African Studies Center. And sorry, just a sec. I'm the graduate assistant at the African Studies Center, and I took over from running African Tea Time from Dr. Damaris Jyoti. So if you haven't met, welcome aboard. All right, so today we have Chef Njathi. So today we'll be speaking on the topic food literacy and how it's an agent for dignified life. This is going to be a very interesting discussion. Just delving into and just if you looked at the flyer that we sent out, the chef says that food is probably one of the most political thing you'll ever touch. And through his talk, he's going to tell us why that is the case, right? And so welcome, Chef Njathi. Thank you for agreeing to present at today's African Tea Time. So I'm just going to give you a few moments to introduce yourself because I don't want to introduce you and then downplay your qualifications. But so go ahead and introduce yourself. And then we'll get into the topic, food literacy as pedagogy and agent for dignified life. And then after that, we're going to have a session to ask questions. All right. So, Chef, if you're ready, please go ahead. Sorry, please unmute yourself. You're still muted.
Okay, sorry about that. I thought you muted me, so sorry. Yes. So yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you very much for your patience. And I want to just say from the beginning, I'm in a slightly noisy area, as I'll explain to you. I'm in Madrid. I had come here for a food conference, a food design conference. And there was a hurricane in North Carolina. And then I had to go to the village during the time I was here. So, there was a little bit of a delay in the whole program. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not in the usual place. So to make it happen, I had to be somewhere where there is not as much privacy as I would have liked. So please bear with me, and I appreciate for your patience. So now I want to just correct one thing that I being downplaying my my qualification is not a concern. Because I'm very, very excited to be talking to students because this is something that I'm very, very passionate about. And as you correctly stated, it is true that one of the often quoted phrase attributed to me is that I say I make a case that food is the most political thing that you ever touch in your life. But before that, let me first just say very, very briefly something about myself. Which I think is going to be relevant to my discussion. So, number one, I was born in a very small village in Kenya, in central part of Kenya, where my mother was what they call subsistence farmer. So that means we grew almost 95% of all the food we consumed, but we also grew coffee as a commercial product. So that's where I spent 10 years of my life. With my mother, where we mostly farmed. I also attended 3 years of schooling there before I proceeded to the capital city of Kenya, which is Nairobi, where I spent 10 years of my schooling there with my father, and before I came to the US. So while I was living with my mother, that's why I mostly learned most of what I talk about when I talk about sustainability. Is the most sustainable place I've ever lived in my life. And since I left there, I'm ever trying to fight to get back there because I thought it was such a boring life in the village. There was no street lights. We had dirt floors. We had outdoors toilet. It was just everything that, anybody interested in modernity would wish not to have. But yet, when I went to the city, I realized that I was actually concentrating on the wrong things. The one thing that the village had going for it is that I was at home. I had a sense of belonging. I was where my ancestors were, and I was actually a benefit of all the work that my ancestors had done by clearing the land, tending, being stewards of the land, bequeathing us with the land, and planting fruit trees that we were still, and trees that we were still enjoying, and the like. But also that we had food, and we were living very, very sustainably. You know, we were living with very low carbon footprint, you know, because we didn't even take our shit anywhere. You know, we had outdoor, so we went to the toilet, it stayed there with us. We didn't ship it to other people. So anyway, so that's that for the village. When I went to the city, I started learning about activism because my father and as well as my mother as well, they were both very active in the struggle for liberation. And my father had spent 6.5 years in the British Gulag as a prisoner of war. And it's while my father was in the Gulag that he attempted to organize a boycott and a sort of rebellion because of the poor quality food that they were having. And as a result, the newspaper people came and they took a picture of him. So I have a picture of my father wearing prisoners' clothing, and which is probably one of the most valuable things I inherited from my father. So saying all that to say that activism is not something I opted into, it's something I was born into. I can opt out of it, but I cannot choose to do. It's something that I was born into. So having said that, I can just very briefly say that when I came to the US, I went to a HBCU and I studied political science and philosophy. From there, I went to graduate school and I did a 2 masters and I studied medical anthropology and urban anthropology. From there, instead of doing a PhD, I studied for 4 years with the goal of answering some very basic questions, like what is the role of an educated Black man in this time and space that we are living in, and what is it that I could do as an educated person in order to advance that cause. So anyway, so after 4 years, I realized that that's when I realized that food is the most political thing that you'll ever touch in your life. And it's because of that that I decided to go to culinary school and I studied culinary arts. And hence I do the work that I do. So most of the work I do is I speak, I also offer classes about preparing food in line with my political thoughts. And I work with universities, nonprofits, where I do residencies and talk about a cuisine that I designed called Afro Futuristic Conscious Cuisine. So that's enough by my introduction. So first and foremost, why do I say that food is the most political thing you ever touch in your life? That's if you forget my name, if you forget everything else, please just remember this. In my research, I've come to realize that food is the most political thing that you'll ever touch in your life. And it's also the most intimate thing that you ever touch in your life because everybody eats. Not a single person doesn't eat. The only, maybe 2 types of people don't eat. People who want to die or people who are out of their mind. But if you not try to commit suicide and you're not out of your mind, you better believe that whatever else you'll be doing within the next years, 20 years, 50, 70 years, 100 years, you'll be living, you're going to be eating. That's for sure. So I came to realize that people who are extremely smart and powerful know that if you want to really, really, really have power, control the one thing that everybody needs at all times, and you'll be the most political thing. You'll be the most powerful person in the world. So therefore, while unbeknown to most people, food slowly started being weaponized as a political tool. And what do I mean by that? Is that food itself became a political tool to empower and disempower some people. When I was growing up, my parents would use the seeds they harvested, maybe from corn or from beans or other things that they harvested. Then they'll just actually choose some of the best crop and then save some of the for seed and then plant those next year. Now, somebody became very, very smart and created a seed that once you plant, you can plant it again. You have to go back to them every time. So all they have to do is sit down and they patent it. They patent it as intellectual property. So they get paid every time you eat. Every time you eat, you open your mouth. You better believe that there is somebody who adds no value to the food you're consuming. But because they patented a seed and used their massive power to force farmers to grow that kind of seed, then they get paid every time. So in other words, you're paying an extra tax to somebody for nothing. They don't offer you any services. They just made a seed that actually is worse off than the seeds that we had, because some of the GMO seeds, they call genetically modified seeds, and I'm using corn in particular, they are actually designed to be able to use a lot of chemicals like glyphosate. So if anybody knows anything about glyphosate, is a weed killer, and when you actually spray on it, any green matter on it, that green plant dies. But the company called Monsanto has designed a type of corn that even if you spray glyphosate on it, it will not dry up like it generally should. And the reason why they do that is so that large-scale farmers don't have to weed their corn. But that's just part of the story. Part of the idea is that they want to control the seed market, because the last frontier in the Wild West kind of mentality that is really not controlled by major corporations. It's seeds. Majority of the seeds in the world until maybe 5-10 years ago were in the hands of small-scale farmers. So big business realized that if they can get all that market, that means a lot of money to them. And we've seen places like India where cotton seeds have been introduced and GMO seeds have been introduced, and they were 1,000 times more expensive than the generic seeds that the farmers were using. And then those seeds themselves require a lot of water. And for marketing strategies, to show you how devious these people are, in India, they will go to various villages and communities, and they'll give those seeds the name of the gods in that region. Let's say you are a believer in Jesus, so they'll call that seed Jesus seed, just so that mostly uneducated farmers would be really attracted to those seeds. And we know now, it's public information. You can get that information online, that hundreds of thousands of farmers have died because they planted those seeds expecting to get the results that were advertised, but ended up owing money to the banks that they couldn't pay and getting very, very poor harvest. And then they could not live with the thought that their family farm, the only valuable thing they have in this world, will be taken away from them because they bought seeds that were actually supposed to make them much wealthier and allow them to live a better life. But because the seeds failed, then that family would have to lose its farm. So that's just how political the seed business is. So I pause there so that for the sake of time and just move a little faster to the next page. So that's one way of controlling food and making food political. So that's on the growing part, which is the first part. The second part is the consumer. So because the consumer is now using food like corn, and we're using corn for this case just for the example, for the purpose of illustration, is now you have all this corn that is being grown using glyphosate, or what most people know as Roundup. And the active ingredient in Roundup is glyphosate. So because a lot of glyphosate is being used to grow the corn, a lot of consumers are consuming glyphosate. Now, glyphosate has been proven to have carcinogenic properties, and scientists have been knowing this for years. And they had been trying to sue Monsanto for a very, very long time to get the product taken away from the shelves because it was causing so much cancer. And it wasn't until 2018 when Dwayne Johnson finally won a case against Monsanto in California and was awarded over $200 million because of the kind of cancer, melanoma cancer that he was suffering from because of glyphosate. And it was very clear the cancer that he was suffering from was caused by glyphosate because he was a groundskeeper at a high school. So he was constantly using Roundup to spray in the fields. So think about it for a minute. He's a groundskeeper who got cancer, spraying Roundup at a school. What do you think is the impact of that Roundup on the kids who are playing on those playgrounds? So let's pause that right there. So we know without any doubt that Roundup does cause cancer. Now, there's a research by a very, very good scientist from MIT called Stephanie Jeanette, who has actually indicated that there's a very, very clear correlation between the rate of cancer in the United States and the amount of Roundup that we use. So the more Roundup we use, the more cancers that we have. But cancer is not the only problem with the Roundup. We have issues of autistic children. The rates of autistic children going up really fast, actually tracking the rise in use of glyphosate. So according to Stephanie Jeanette, she can predict, just using her graph, that by the year 2030 or 2032, I think, I'm not exactly sure, but very soon, like in the next 5-6 years, half of all children born in the United States will be autistic. Now, I don't know how many in this class are not familiar with some kind of spectrum of autism. If you have autistic children and having 50% of the children in the United States being autistic, that's just enough to bankrupt the whole country right there. Because the budget that we will take to take care of these children, you see some of these children sometimes have to have almost a personal teacher, one individual teacher, or just a few students being taken care of by a teacher, as well as being a very, very big burden on some parents. I actually have one friend, actually several of them, and now that I think about it, whereby one of the parents has to stay home just to take care of that child, autistic child. So having autistic children is not just about that, it's bad enough that you have children who are being autistic and poisoned, but it's a national crisis. It's beyond just a family affair. It's a national crisis. You can imagine 50 years down the road, the amount of people it will take to actually take care of those children. And those children are not necessarily, for some of them at least, they are not necessarily going to grow out of the condition. So they'll be taken care of, or they'll need personal care from a person or some people throughout their life. So it's not something that's just going to go away. So if you think about the cost factor, and I'm not just trying to downplay the emotional and the humanness of it, but I'm just very, very specifically talking about the cost aspect, because even without the issue of autism, the budget for healthcare in the United States is just about to bankrupt this country. So we're talking about a country that's already facing bankruptcy because of healthcare cost. And now on top of that crisis, you add an additional substantial amount of cost because of simply something that we can control, of having food grown with glyphosate. So that's one. Now, another aspect, and then we progress to something else. Because corn is being grown using GMO seeds, which American corporations have invested significant amount of money in order to create these seeds. The government also seizes the opportunity to have a product that the United States can sell throughout the world using its military muscle, to whereby it can force other countries through subtle means and sometimes not subtle means to force other countries to grow this corn. So the way the government does that is by subsidizing corn. When the government subsidizes corn, it encourages more farmers to grow the corn than any other product because they know they have a guaranteed market. Anybody who has done any farming knows that prices in farming fluctuates depending on demand and supply. But when a farmer knows that all they got to do is plant corn and they'll get a check from the government, who won't want to do that? That's guaranteed market. So what that means is that sometimes the governments now gets into the market, into the business of regulating the corn market. It pays farmers to grow corn and to keep them more enticed to keep growing corn. Whenever there is a glut of corn, the government issues checks to farmers who grow corn, not grow corn. So the government actually start paying welfare to farmers so that they don't grow corn. Because if the government doesn't pay them, they'll be discouraged and they might stop growing corn and move on to other products. So you have another very, very convoluted business that affects the whole food landscape because so much land now is being put under corn that more than anything else. So number one. Number two, because America now is growing so much corn, and sometimes because it's encouraging, enticing farmers, it's creating incentives for farmers, the country finds itself having a glut of corn from certain years. So America has so much corn. America is growing enough corn that it can actually feed the whole world if all the corn is being grown in the US was corn that can be consumed. But unfortunately, some of the corn that America grows is not corn that you can use. Most of the corn is now being grown to make things that high fructose corn syrup. And the reason why that is the case is because corn being subsidized makes it very, very likely that businesses that use sugar, for example, businesses that use starch, will come up with ways of trying to use sugar, the sugar from corn, because corn is very cheap. Farmers that grow beef, for example, or livestock, if they are looking for the most convenient and affordable product to feed their livestock, corn comes number one because it's the cheapest product in the market. So because of something that started very, very small, as I explained earlier, now it started infiltrating all these other businesses that people had that typically don't have any alliance to corn, to glyphosate, or to GMO. So you find that instead of having pasture to grow beef or other livestock like sheep that people used to do 30, 40 years ago, now a lot of that pasture land is being torn down and is being used to grow corn because the farmer who owns that land can actually get guaranteed prices from the government. So what actually happens is that now there's less pasture for the livestock. So other business people find an opportunity to use the corn and create what they call CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operation. And they put maybe 100,000 cows in a very concentrated area, and they almost feed it exclusively on corn. They buy these calves that are after maybe 3 months or 6 months of drinking the milk from their mothers, and after mostly 3 months to 4 months, they feed these cows on exclusively corn diet because the corn is so cheap. So one, the consumer thinks they're getting a deal because the beef prices and other livestock prices, meat prices, come down because they're using subsidized corn. But this subsidized corn is very unhealthy because it has a lot of chemicals in it. And what it will do will ultimately cause autism, as I said, diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, and the like. That's another aspect. Then, just to give you maybe a deeper analysis, is that when a cow has 4 stomachs, and a cow is actually not biologically designed to eat corn, especially when this corn is grown with all these chemicals and chemical fertilizer. when the cow eats corn, and I know this firsthand because we used to have cows and we used to grow corn. It wasn't GMO and it wasn't used with grown with chemical fertilizer. But even though that corn was mostly organic, whenever the cows would eat the corn, they would bloat. So if you go to these couples or these concentrated feeding animal feeding operations, you'll find cows with holes on their stomach, a hole that's wide enough for you to stick your fist. And the reason why they cut that hole is because they want to keep the cows from bloating to death. Because when the cows bloat, can actually die. So it's a very, very inhumane way of raising these cows. Secondly, and most equally important, is that because this corn has all kinds of chemicals, that's number one, and the animals are being fed in a very concentrated areas, and they are standing on their feces, so they don't have anywhere to roam. So they're standing on their feces. The animals are always liable to get sick because of the filth they're around. So to keep these animals from getting sick, they have to be on a constant antibiotic dosage. So if you look at the ears of the cows, they have a vial that actually drops of antibiotics inside into the bloodstream of the cow to keep it from getting sick. So what happens is that in the end, you have feces from the cow that cannot be used for farming because it's so toxic. And what these farmers, these operations do is they dig big ponds where all this sludge is actually stored and stored there. So what happens is that all these things are so toxic that whenever it rains, these ponds full of these feces overflow, and the water actually gets into the water streams and is taken downstream and eventually ends up in the Gulf of Mexico in the United States. Excuse me, I'm on a meeting. I don't know, comprehend.
Are you sleeping here?
No, I'm on a meeting, but I'm leaving. So I'm sorry. So anyway, so what happens is that whenever the water goes downstream, it actually, because it's so toxic, it actually causes what they call I'm forgetting the technical name, but it means dead zone. And these areas are called dead zone because in the ocean, because the chemicals in the feces, in the poop of the cow, actually encourage the growth of bacteria and algae in the ocean that they actually cover the whole region of the ocean, and that suffocates the water, the oxygen, all the marine life underneath because of these algae. So that causes dead zone. So you have some dead areas now on the Gulf of Mexico that are dead zones. There's nothing growing underneath the water. And some of these, sometimes as big as the state of Rhode Island, and it's getting even much bigger. So this problem is very, very, very big. So that's that. I pause that and I finish with the food. Because the corn also, again, is still cheap. I'm still on the corn. You find that corn oil and corn is in almost everything. I challenge you to go home and look in your pantry for all the processed goods and look for three things: cornstarch, corn oil, and soy lecithin. And those three things go hand in hand because the areas that grow corn, whenever they are not growing corn, there's something called crop rotation. If you know anything about farming, you can't keep growing the same product over and over, going on the same place, because it actually depletes the soil. So you have to grow different things to encourage the soil to heal from some of the usage from the previous crop. And corn is known to be the one product that consumes more fertilizer than any other product. So for that reason, the most convenient thing to use for crop rotation in the cornfields is soy. So you have a product called soy. So if you have, for example, if you have 10 million acres of land and corn production, you know at one time you're going to have 10 million acres. Those 10 million acres will be grown with soy at some point in time for the sake of crop rotation. But soy is a product that we don't consume technically in the US. Most people don't consume soy. I don't think anybody has been gone to anybody's house and somebody served them soybeans. Soy is used to make soy milk, and it's made specifically for that reason because there was a glut of soybeans that farmers didn't know what to do with, and they make soy milk, they make tofu and that. But they also make soy lecithin and starch. So those products that are laced with Roundup and other chemicals end up, actually there's another chemical that grows corn that is what me mentioning here, called atrazine. Atrazine is the most commonly used herbicide in the growing of corn. So when you have those two chemicals, for example, Roundup and with glyphosate and atrazine, then you have chemicals that are actually very, very good, bad for your health. Atrazine, just to give you an example, two facts I'll give you about atrazine, is atrazine first can travel 600 miles and still be active. So you can use the atrazine in Michigan and it can be carried by storm water 600 miles and can still be active. Second fact that I'll give you about atrazine is that atrazine has been shown to change the sex of the frogs from male to female. So there are male frogs that have been shown to have eggs. So it's very, very toxic chemical, to say the least. But for the sake of time, I don't want to spend a lot of time, but now I hope you understand what I mean. That food, because of something as simple as corn, our food start becoming more devastating. I'll give you last fact about food, and then I'll maybe pause and allow for some questions, and then I can talk about about dignity and stuff. So take corn and oil. Corn oil is literally the most commonly used oil in most of the processed goods that you buy. Some kind of corn oil. Just look at peanuts, for example, and compare peanuts with corn. If you go, you can take almonds if you want, or any other nut, pecan. If you press those nuts very hard, you can actually see the oil in your hand. But to go and try to press corn and see how quickly you'll be able to get oil, it takes a very long process to get oil from corn. So here you have this oil that is pressed from corn using another chemical that is also very toxic and called hexane, that is also known to cause cancer. So now you don't only have the atrazine or the glyphosate in the corn, now you're adding another toxic chemical called hexane in order to get the oil out of the corn. That oil is what you see when you go to McDonald's, for example, and you see the oil that is used to make fries. Okay, if you look at that oil is always boiling. Okay, now what we know about oil, that all oils have a smoke point. If you cook that oil beyond that smoke point, then that oil becomes rancid. But now we have a final stage where that oil is, because it's very cheap, it's very, very convenient for the manufacturers like McDonald's and other fast food restaurants. That's the kind of oil they are using. If they use animal fat, they're using mostly animal fat from animals that are produced at the PAFOS or concentrated feeding operations, and that animal is also toxic. So in other words, you have just one gravy train of toxicity in the United States. That's the reason why obesity is on the rise. So since I know that, I'll pause here by saying that since 1991, February 28th, I stopped eating food that's not organic. And if even when I'm traveling, like now, I can actually show you the food. I'll actually show you the food that I'm traveling with if we have a few minutes. So it's for that reason why I say, one, the food is the most political thing you ever touch in your life, because you can disempower a people most convenient just using food. Why? Because people just seem to assume that because food is being sold, it's good. It's good. Oh, it can be sold if it's bad. But yet, the reality couldn't be further from that fact. Because if the food that's being sold wasn't as bad as I'm stating here, then we won't be having an increased rate of obesity, whereby in some places you have like 60% in some cities, where 60% of the population is obese, is overweight or obese. So that's ridiculous. Where are we going with that? Okay? So anyway, so let me pause that, and hopefully I've explained why food is political, and why maybe people who have been previously oppressed, especially people like me, people who have been colonized, enslaved, or in exile, you think that you're getting your freedom, you move from another country, like people like me thinking that I'm coming to the US, the land of the free and the brave, and I'm going to have the American dream. And one thing is for sure, I'll most likely be eating the worst form of food I've eaten anywhere in the world. There are fewer places in the world right now where people are eating, especially in rural areas and small countries, where people are being exposed to food that is highly processed and highly chemicalized than we are having here in the US. But the opposite is also true. There are fewer places in the world where you can have the kind of quality of food and diversity of food you can have. I was in Spain, for example, and I bought I'm in Spain right now, but the region where I came from, actually, I'll show you guys also. I can share that with you also, that I bought some arborio rice. This high-end rice. I used to get it from Whole Foods all the time. It's an Italian rice. It's sticky rice, and they use it to make a risotto. I love this rice. But the rice is like $6. Right? I've paid as much as $20, $25 a pound of rice, because it was local rice in the United States. So I eat in a political way, and I might be wearing very cheap clothes, which I mostly do, but I live as a liberated, what I like to consider as a food literate African. I live in one of the most expensive bodies that I know of, my friends. So that is why I know it's political, because I've seen a lot of people with money, but yet with big houses, big cars, and I'm not saying there's anything bad with that, but yet they are living in one of the cheapest bodies relative to their income. Why? Because they don't realize that food is political. They just consume food, just unawares, and that's why, hence the word food literacy. And that's why I make the case that we are illiterate about food. Just like if somebody is illiterate about reading, you won't expect them to write their name or read an essay for you, because they don't know. And in the same way, people are illiterate about food. So people just consume food without knowing what the consequences of the food they consume. So I pause there, and then we can continue from there.
Okay. All right. So thank you for that first part. So I think you brought out very important things just to note, and I was just thinking back to Michelle Obama's, when Michelle Obama was the first lady, and she introduced this food program for school-going children, and it faced a lot of resistance, and eventually I think it was done away with. I'm not quite sure about that part, but that just gets to tell you how political food, when you think of it, can get. And you also mentioned, food and disease, and just stuff like, giving back to autistic children. So do you really know what's on your plate? I guess those are some of the questions you should be asking. And one of the things that you mentioned was, the whole thing about organic food. I know there are studies that have shown that organic food is not really safer or more nutritious than just the normal GMO food, unfortunately. So also I want to hear what you have to say about that, because if people are going to be spending much more on organic food, but they're not getting really more nutrition from it, then what's the point, right? So just some of the things to think about as we go into the next part of your talk. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. Does anybody have questions? If you do, you can speak up or you can leave them in the chat.
Hi, Abby. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much, Chef Kabui, for that kind of scary, if you ask me,
I hope I don't
presentation,
scare
but worth it. So my question is, how can we make the best decisions in terms of what we eat as, let's say, students? I'm speaking in the matter, even myself, I'm not trying to say, but I'm talking about we, the people that are not very well versed in terms of how do I, if I went to the store to buy food, how can I don't really know that we can get, unless we grow it. I don't know that you can go to the market and buy food that is fully healthy. I'm just saying. But how can I make the best decision based on what is in the market? How can I learn to study the food before I buy it?
That's a very good question. And I don't want to cut you short. Are you finished?
I'm done. Thank you.
Good. So I can tell you, I have good news. I have good news for you. Okay. So I complain a lot about America. So America, being Black, being African, I have a lot of things. I have a lot of things to complain about America. But there's one thing I love about America, because America lets you know when you poison yourself. Okay. Any vegetable that you buy in the store, unfortunately, that's the only one thing I regret I don't have, because I typically always have a sample to show the students. But it's easy. Once I tell you, you'll be good. But you'll know, because your students, you're smart. There are two types of food you buy in the market. If you grow vegetables and fruits, if they are vegetables, they are fruits, they have a label. You can't sell anything here in the United States. It's actually against the law if you go to any store and find any food that doesn't have a label, unless it fell off. Or either they don't have a label, they have a sign on the side. So this is the good news for you. If you look at any vegetable or fruit, you'll have either 4 numbers or 5 numbers. If it has 5 numbers, let's start with the 5 numbers. If it has 5 numbers, you already know that's an organic product. Okay? The highest that 5 numbers can be will be 99999. That's the highest it will be. So if you apply maybe some allowed chemicals that are not toxic, they are chemicals, but they are not toxic. They are not carcinogenic, for example. The number will come down. So maybe it'll be 9932, something like that. Okay. If you add some more chemicals, maybe for whatever reason, maybe it was whatever it is, you add a little bit more chemicals, the number will go down. So the number can only go down up to 6. It can't go beyond that, below that. That's the only, if you put that many chemicals, then, your chemical farming, that's not organic product. So that's for organic. So you can know exactly what you're buying. And the beautiful thing about what I can correct you is you can actually, at least in America, because there is a law against that define what organic food. If you sell something and says organic, then that's deceptive advertising. Okay, so you can actually sue that person. That's a good part. I don't know where you're from, but I know in Kenya they have an organic food act, but it's not followed, and nobody ever been sued for using, because they're very, very slack regulation, and it's by design. Because if America, if for example my country Kenya and most African countries, if they have very strict regulations America is not going to be able to sell some of their products. And a lot of people will know why they are getting sick, and they will not buy those products. So America uses their power to manipulate the political climate in those countries to whereby they have very lax laws. Okay, so that's for organic. Now let me tell you about non-organic. Yes. So under 4, any number with 4 also, that means that food already grown with chemicals. So you'll see some of them as 4, 3, 2, 1, like bananas. But you see some bananas have the number as low as 3. That means that banana has almost nothing but chemicals, has so many chemicals already. So that's the good news. You can know that at least you are safeguarding your health. Okay, let me say that. And let me say that for clarity. But this is something I want to finish answering the question. I want you to ask yourself, you're in college. If you go to all classes from kindergarten all the way to PhD, can you certify for sure and guarantee what any of the students will end up doing in their life? How many people think that you can guarantee, or somebody's going to law school, 100% without any doubt that this person will be a lawyer? If somebody's in engineering, 100%, this person will not go into business, will not go into music, will not go into sports. The question is, I think we all agree, is nobody can determine what any student will end up doing in their life. Nobody can tell. Anybody tell you they can tell, they are lying. At least 100% guarantee. We can think, we think they'll be teaching, yeah. But you can't say guarantee that any student will be this in this career. But nobody will be dumb enough to say that all the students, whether they're in PhD, kindergarten, high school, will end up not eating in their life. So we know all the students will end up eating. So my question to you is, why then is it that you have a school system in the United States that teaches the students everything else you can imagine, except one thing we know they'll for sure need, without any doubt, any shadow of doubt? We don't learn how to eat. We are not literate about food. Why is it I'm talking to college students and teaching them about how to shop for food? You think this is something they should have learned in kindergarten. But yet, until recently, I'll go to universities, I do residencies at universities. And that's a question I ask. I have this food, I say, what is the number? For a long time, nobody, not even one person knew. Many universities have gone, and I'm speaking to maybe 200 students, a class of 200 students. And nobody knows a lecture hall, and nobody knows what. So you can't tell me that this is not something that somebody is doing by design, intentional. That you want to intentionally have people who are illiterate about food so that you can manipulate them, or for whatever reason, and they can eat bad food and whatever reason. But you cannot tell me a country that is going to space and other places has going to all these deficits in order to go to war, cannot go into a deficit just to teach their citizens how to eat. So that's my answer to your question. I hope I answered it.
Yes, you did, and thank you. One quick follow-up, just very basic.
Sure.
The bananas that I know that are not organic in the market, that are, please don't say organic.
Yes.
Their code is 4011. What does that mean? 4011.
4011. You just say it has 4 numbers. They're not organic. If it has 4 numbers, it's not organic. It has five numbers, it is organic. And the higher the 5 of the higher the number is close to 99999, then you know that's the closest you are to having a pure food. Make sense?
Yes.
So I can answer your question. There's a question I didn't answer. You asked me, hey, what can you do as students? Then that's something I teach, and that's something maybe you can pursue with the various departments, the African Studies Center, and I can do a residency there. And I share with students how to prepare organic food on a budget. The best way I know how to eat on a budget, so that when you graduate, you will leave with a degree and full literacy instead of living with a degree and a potential for a lifestyle disease because of the poor food that you've been eating, which will undermine all the hard working people. That's it. All right. Any other question or any other follow-up?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there are any more questions. So maybe you can talk about and food as an agent for dignified life. I think that was the second part of your talk.
Sure.
Right.
Wonderful. So I'll start that part by answering your point. Number one, organic food is not just about health, but it's about life. It's about more than that. Because even if you tell me, oh, I'm buying this food and I'm not getting value, those are fighting words. How is it that you're not getting value when you're buying food that doesn't have chemicals that are polluting the environment? Okay, so there's value in living an environment that is not polluted. As I explained, you have atrazine, you have Roundup that is killing kids, causing kids to be autistic. You have Roundup that's causing people to have cancer. You have Roundup that's actually contaminating our water table. Like a lot of the water now is contaminated with Roundup because every year, we're using more and more and more Roundup. Where do you think that Roundup is going? It's ending up, it will end up coming to you some kind of way. I don't care. You can, like I say, atrazine can travel 600 miles. So I don't know how many miles I am from Michigan, but hell, if you use it in Michigan and I'm downstream, the atrazine will end up affecting me. So organic food, I just want to clarify, is not just about your own personal health or directly eating that. I eat that plus more, number one. Number two, it's just a rejoinder. People say, just ask yourself, why is it that Michelle Obama was having such a big problem with by the way, let me just clarify for anybody who might not be familiar with it, is when Michelle Obama used the term organic for her garden, some corporations were very, very much against that. They say, you can call it a garden, but don't call it organic garden. Why? Because you're disadvantaging those people who are not growing organic food. Why? Because you'll make more and more people, because you're such a strong, well-known personality, more and more people will start eating organic. And what will happen to people who are poisoning people? They'll be out of business. So it became such a contentious issue. And just to show you how weak our political system is, she had to give in. Why did she have to give in? If she cares about the children and she's literate about food, she should have given in. She should have said, you go and sell your food to the people you want to sell. You cannot infringe on my right to call my garden a garden that's organic. What does that have to do with it? Anything. But that just shows how political this is. That even the first lady, supposedly the most powerful woman in the United States, can cow down to corporations that must mean those corporations are stronger than she and her husband are, because her husband could even stand for for the wife and say, man, you mind your business. This is her right. No, she could. They both could not do it. They had to cow down and swallow the humble pie and just call it a garden. So it lost a lot of momentum. So I'm only saying that to say that that should be another clear indication that food is very political. So, but when you eat the food, you're getting a lot of value. That's number one. Number two, if these corporations are so strong that they can make the president and the first lady, and Michelle Obama, buckle down, do you think that they are less likely to use their power to influence studies to show that this food is not healthy? I eat that kind of food. I don't have any health insurance. I don't take any medical I don't take any kind of medicine. I'm 56 years old. And I'm not in any pain in my body. And I can see my eyes, I can see I'm not wearing glasses, I don't have contact, whatever. I attribute most of it to eating healthy food and organic food. Like, I don't joke. I will not go, I will not eat any food that's not organic. And for that, I think I paid I reap the benefit. I also used to have allergies. I can tell you that. I used to have allergies when I first came to the US. And when I changed the way I was eating, I got rid of certain things. That's why I designed my cuisine, call it Afro Futuristic Conscious Cuisine. And my allergies are like 90% better. You know, I sometimes I don't even know if there's pollen. You know, I might sneeze just a little bit, but that's it. But before that, I used not to be able to sleep. Yeah, they'll keep me up all night because my nose would be black, and I couldn't close my mouth. If I close my mouth when I'm asleep, I'll just wake up because I start suffocating. So that's about it. About responding to the question. You know, do people get value for money? You know, yes, you get more than value for money. You also do the right thing. You are dignified in just your act, in that you're not participating in poisoning the planet. Okay, so that's that. Now, let's talk about the idea of dignified life. So, now, take the average family in the United States. And I'll even add to the mix in Kenya, where I'm from. You start with the father, and the father works hard, and the mother works hard, and they earn money, and they are paying insurance. Health insurance now is mandatory. And so they are spending a significant amount of their income towards making sure they have a healthy life. Okay. So first point, how sensible is it for you to insure anything? You insure anything because you value it. Okay. For example, we use a car. If you insure your car, it's actually against the law to go and wreck your car so that you can file for insurance claim. Okay, you can actually go to jail for that. Okay, you wreck the car so that you can collect insurance, right? But isn't that exactly what we're doing when we insure our life? Even go beyond that, even buy life insurance. That shows that we have a lot of value in our life. But why would we insure something that we are so careless and mindless about? That will take bad food, things that even say this junk food, and we consume junk food while at the same time insuring our life. So we must not care about our life. I don't know anybody who has a car like a Mercedes Benz or a Ferrari. If the car says use only gasoline, I don't know anybody who will go in their right mind will go and put diesel. But that's exactly what we do. We know what is the right thing to eat. We know some things are not healthy, they are junk. We know some things are nothing but sugar and water. And even worse, we eat it, and we get worse than that, we give it to our children. So you have children because of the ignorant choice of their parents who are now obese. So the bad and dumb choices that some parents who know better are doing are now causing what? Harm to the children. So we go back to the family. Now you have a family, and this case, I want to use a black family because I'm Kenyan, I'm black in the US. And I already have a historical injustices that are tied to my lineage that a lot of the people are either colonized or enslaved. So we have a gap of wealth because of our historical injustice. And now on top of that, we add another load or another injustice to ourselves by consuming food that is going to ensure that we are going to have less than optimal life. Now, I'll use the example of the that actually was appeared in the American Anthropological Association. 2017, they featured me in their annual publication. They interviewed me, and because they thought that it was quite interesting that I was actually making a connection between food and power or disempowerment or injustice as long as I've been. So they featured it in the magazine. So in the magazine, they had a caption, and the caption had four sections. Two sections were about African Americans, and two other sections down below was about Africa. And the first two was the idea that we were free, we were enslaved. But when so much energy was applied to ensure that we would be powerful, then they said, because we were slaves, now we are free, and because we are free, now we are going to enjoy a lot of rights. Okay, so the rights that we formerly enslaved Africans thought they would enjoy would be that they would live more comfortable lives. So they started living the life that they attributed to being what was the standard life. So, but going out to eat, places they were not allowed to eat before, and ordering food and so on and so on. But down the road, more African Americans forgot how to grow their own food and now start relying more and more on processed food. And because of income and also a level of literacy, people who are on a lower income tend to eat more processed food. That's just fact. So because they are not growing their own food, and they attribute growing food to being more enslaved as backward, then they are consuming less and less food that they grow. As opposed to the case before emancipation, where a lot of Black people who had gardens, they would eat from the land and so on. And a lot of them were doing food work. And even if they were not doing food work, they will still keep a garden. Now that knowledge ends up being lost. A lot of that knowledge is being lost. A lot of land that was in the hand of Black people end up being lost and being turned over to white hands. And in the end, you find that the dream of being free now is being undermined by poor health, because people are being amputated, people are being having to use oxygen tanks and all that kind of stuff. That really undermines the quality of life and what you call standard quality of life or optimal quality of life. That's for African Americans. And what happens is that when that happens, you also undermine the economic viability of the family. Because if somebody is having their leg amputated, somebody has diabetes, somebody has high blood pressure, they are less likely to work as hard in order to earn more and save more for the next generation. So what happens is that when maybe a grandparent, a parent gets sick and is hospitalized or bedridden, now that means the rest of the family also is being affected, because they have to take care of the parent. They have to work less as well. So in the end, the overall outcome of poor diet is poor economic health for the family, both health and also economic health. So in other words, because of poor health, the dream, the quote unquote American dreams, started becoming more like an American nightmare. So that's for the African American. In Africa, more people who are becoming middle class are eating Western food. Like KFC is one of the most popular, among the most popular places that people want to go out, middle income people, or want to go and have and eat. But this chicken is coming from here. It's been grown using corn with Roundup and atrazine and all that other stuff. So Africans themselves started having cancer. Cancer now is the number 3 cause of death in my country, in Kenya. Something that was almost unheard of. When I was young, I never even knew what cancer is. So those 2 examples now go to show or to give way to my assertion that food is becoming a tool of subjugating people and taking them back to this quote unquote colonial and slavery status, or standards of living. Because a lot of people are losing their income, a lot of people are becoming bankrupt and they are filing. The number 1 reason why people file bankruptcy in the US is because of health reasons. So if you're not taking care of your health, then you're actually toying with the idea of being bankrupt. Okay? So because of those 2 reasons, I think we should very, very seriously think about food and think about it in very, very critical ways and take the appropriate measures to make sure we safeguard ourselves. Finally, and the place I want to close is that what I found out in my work is that whenever you find a family member, like maybe a parent, 2 parents being unhealthy, most likely the children are already on a fast track to the same condition. Because maybe some of these old parents were living, when they were young, food was not nearly as bad. But you look at their children are eating the food that's making their parents sick now, even though their parents had a slightly better jump start in life. The children are eating the bad food that the parents are eating now, and that's making the parents sick. So the chances are these children are also going to be sick much earlier than the parents. So eating is not just about you, but about many other people, about the environment, but also the future generation. And that's where I'd like to stop and answer any question anybody might have.
Okay. All right. So do you have any questions? All right, maybe I'll go first. So when you think of food, I mean, one of the things that sort of come to the top of my mind is the whole idea of vegetarian foods, these vegan foods. I know some people who are strictly on a carnivore diet, so all they eat is meat. So what are the differences when you talk of sort of nutritional value, especially in the US right now? So if I was to pick one of those diets, and I don't want you to decide for everybody, but if I was to pick one of those diets, like which one would you go for, basically?
Yeah, I shy away from choosing a diet. I've been a vegan. I was vegan for maybe 15 years, I think, for a while. And it was just experimental for me. And I was just studying, this journey for me. So I tried. The more I learned, I realized that probably the most unhealthiest set of people are going to be the vegans, because they stop eating the vegans and they start using all these processed meat. So it's actually better to eat pasture-raised, organic meat than it is to eat a vegetable burger that is made from corn or oats that have atrazine, Roundup, and other chemicals. So anyway, so in terms of diet, I'm less concerned about diet than what is in the food. I think that's the biggest thing. If we can get the chemicals out of the diet, then we'll be way off us. Let's start from there. Can we all agree that all these chemicals are bad? We know it's scientific. There's not a question about it. We know that. Can we know that? Okay. Then we can talk about some of the good foods that are good. That's a little bit more detailed because. Okay. All right. So that's my take on that. And I don't know whether I answered your question. I think it was a 2-part question. Did I?
Yeah.
What was the other part? Which part did I not answer?
No, I was just trying to see, your view on, the whole vegetarian diet, the whole vegan diet.
Yeah.
The other day I actually had a vegan burger and I couldn't tell the difference. I couldn't tell what I was eating, So it's sort of a very interesting view you made there. All right.
Okay, let's
Mhm.
no, but, no, say it again. No, I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off.
No, go ahead. I was done.
No, I wanted to say that still, so taste is one. Taste is one. But we've been duped because of taste. And I'm not saying people should, you can make anything taste good if you learn. It's just about learning, just like drawing. People can draw you, and for the artists who are so good, they can draw you to whereby people will have a hard time deciding whether it's actually a photograph or it's actually a piece of art. I've seen pictures like that, right? So cooking is the same. And people have lost art of cooking. Cooking, like you talk about food illiteracy, cooking is where it starts. And one of the reasons why a lot of people eat meat is because they think meat is so easy to cook. You can just throw it on the fire. You can grill it. You can just throw it on the fire, take it out, and it tastes good. But cooking other things like vegetables, they take a lot of skill. So whether it's vegan things or whatever, I think we go back to the same thing. What is in it? What is in it? How is it prepared? And what is the nutritional value? Because taste is very ephemeral. That's how something tastes, is just for a second. But once you swallow it, it has a very, very long journey and has very, very serious consequences after that. And for the same reason, like if crack tastes good or feels good, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that somebody take crack or whatever. So I still stick to the point that the key and the solution is to be literate about food so that you know the nutritional value that you're getting, the other added things that you don't want that might be in the food, and what the consequences of that. Once you start from there, then we can talk about how do we prepare it so that it tastes good.
Yeah, so I know Dr. Choti asked this, but just to maybe ask it a little differently.
Sure.
So I mean, you're sort of speaking to mostly students and faculty. We don't have a lot of money. Most of us are broke. They're always up for free food, that kind of a thing. So when you're addressing this sort of specific population, right?
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, and I know you mentioned that, perhaps the African Studies Center would invite you to do sort of extensive program. But if you are talking sort of in a very brief fashion, so what are some of the things that you can advise students to do to sort of to go into this healthier lifestyle than what we just used to, get quick pizza here and, that sort of a thing? To encourage this sort of healthy lifestyle among, students and, take into account their finances. They don't have that much money to be buying very expensive organic food. So what would you advise? Just briefly.
Number one, junk food is very expensive. It's number one. Two, cheap food. Free food is not free because somebody says free food, but they are also tagging. It's almost like a credit card when you eat cheap food because you're eating now, you don't pay. But when you get sick, you're going to pay really, 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 really a high cost because you're going to be feeling terrible. You're going to be heavy. You're not going to like your body. Yeah, and you're going to still go to the hospital. So that's number one. So number two, to answer your question, is that there are ways, and that might take a little bit more time than I have. There are ways of eating reasonably. Why? What do I say? Because if you, for example, when I was a student, or if I'm a student now again, if you would take several students together, and they all get together and they say, "Hey, look, we are going to be cooking together. We're going to be cooking together. So we're going to buy rice and beans and things, and we can cook together if that's an option. And if that's not an option, there are ways. There are still ways to go around. I would buy a small burner or even group. Actually, that would be something very, very progressive for students to do. Create a cooking club. Why? In your dorm or just find a group, and people can be aligned according to their taste or to their flavors. People who are vegan, okay, form a vegan club, and once a month, order things online or travel to the store where you can buy beans and grains and stuff like that, and you can prepare food. But I can tell you, without any fear of contradiction, Americans have the chance of eating the best food than most students, at least compared in Africa. Maybe in Europe, it's slightly different because students don't have to pay for schooling. But even then, the US, students in the US, they have more opportunities than most people in the world. Because one, you can get a small student loan. So and that's an investment. That's for me, I'll charge any kind of food if that's a healthy food, because that's a viable investment. Because even if I eat bad food and then I still end up paying, it's not a smart investment because I still spend anyway. So I have two choices. I can either give the doctor the money or I can eat the money. So for me, I always eat the money. I eat the money. So there are ways of getting around and solving that problem. Finally, and this is also to make a case for myself, which I'm not ashamed. I'm always making a case about myself. If you have a residency, then the school has money. If the students go and say, hey, we want Chef Kabui to come and do a residency here and show us how to eat well. Okay, then that's more likely to change. Because if you don't pressure the school to use the resources that you want, that's your fault. I'll finish by sharing a story about my last residency. The last residency I did last month was at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. I was so shocked, I almost fell down. I was doing one day where we were cooking, but the next day was lectures. So the one day we were cooking, obviously the students ate the food that we were cooking, so it was an issue. But the next day they had to order food. So when we were having the lectures, I've always known that everywhere they order food, I don't even approach the table. So one of the professors who was involved in inviting me for the residency came and said, hey, chef, why are you not even getting some fruits or something like that? Oh, I say, oh, no, I only eat organic. He said, oh, we ordered all organic. This is the second year I've done a residency there. I did one last year, and within 2 years, it was enough to challenge the department, and it's the African Studies department, to spend money to order organic food. The only thing they made, they ordered vegan cupcakes. And even that, there was pushback on. People say, no, we shouldn't order cupcakes, man, because I always make very, very tough case against cakes, Like that's one of my biggest beefs that I have, right? People eat cakes, man. I don't want to go on that road. Let me just take you the food. So anyway, I'm saying the students they have a lot of things that they can do. They have a lot of leverage they can use in order to improve their eating. And those are things that are always taking their life. It's not like you're coming to see a show or a performance. Okay, I'm not saying there's nothing. I love arts. But when you change how you eat now, it drastically changes the trajectory of your life. By the way, I offer a class online. That's totally private. I offer private classes online, food literacy classes. It's called Health and Wellness Restoration through Food Literacy. And I have students as far as Australia. And these people have been totally changed. Their lives have changed just by the way they eat. I have another student in Utah who offered me 20 acres of land because they bet against me. They thought, oh man, all that shit you're saying, man, that sounds too outlandish. Food can be political. Come on, all these are political. Then he kept listening. He's like, wow, this guy lost 65 pounds. Now going to the gym. He didn't go to the gym once. Just doing what he was doing, but he lost 65 pounds. So anyway, he's donated quite a bit of money and a big supporter of my work. So in other words, I'm saying it's a good investment. And if you change how you eat now, you'll be a totally different person than you could have been if you didn't change how you eat.
All right. Thank you so much, Chef. That was a very interesting talk. Let me see if we have questions. If you have questions, please post them in the chat. Um, okay, looks like we have no questions. Yeah, thank you so much for that talk. That was and especially at an airport lobby.
Yeah, man.
I don't know if this is something you do
I'll
often.
do 3 a.m. in the morning. This is what I do. That's what I love to do. And yes.
Yeah, so thank you. I mean, that makes us think about do you really know what's on your plate, you know? So as you go for dinner, you need to think, do you know what's on your plate? All right. So questions, all right. We don't have questions in the room. All right, Chef, thank you so much for having this talk. It's given me a lot to think about, and probably the guys in the meeting as well. Do you really know what's on your plate? So, all right, and there is his food.
That's
So
my rice. That's my rice. I promised I want to keep my end of the bargain. And hold on for just a second. I have a dessert. Those are pumpkin, manuka honey, and sweet potatoes. And that's what it's really sweet, so it's very good for me. And then I have black eyed peas.
oh wow.
Black eyed peas with leeks, olive oil, and leeks or olive oil. It's not very complex, you know, and some pumpkins. But then I have an apple. I have an organic apple, but because it's from the farm where I was in the village, it doesn't have a label. That's the only thing I wish. But that's and I have a lot of seeds. I have a lot of seeds here that I bought. I collect seeds, by the way. I should have mentioned that I'm building a food literacy center in Kenya to have one of the foodiest space that at least I know of. Because when I go to Kenya, I have enough food that I can only eat from my garden. So we'll be having residencies there. We already have one residency from Germany who came and spent some time there, and they really had a good time. And we want to have a library that we are building up, and we have a learning kitchen. We want to build a learning kitchen. So it's in the works, but it has that diversity of over 100 things growing. We have bananas, we have avocados, pineapples, and we have 3 farms. But the idea is to do what I call the dinner of return. And the dinner of return is a simulation of the last just dinner. I'd say just, meaning that it was free food. The food was not intoxicated, was grown with love, with care, with dignity, okay? And through either lived memory or through our DNA. If, for example, we were colonized, who was the last ancestor in my lineage? Who consumed either the last breakfast or the last dinner before colonization started? And if you can simulate that, then it's possible for people and tied to a taste, then it's possible for you to think that, to really realize that it's possible to do it. It's possible. We can do it again. We tie that to a memory, man, it's very powerful. That's just my thing. And I've gone through great length and invested quite a bit of what I've earned. Actually, what I earned goes to that project because it's a huge project in me that people can come and eat only food that we've grown and nothing else. And when I move back to Kenya, which I like to write and I want to move, I'll only be eating there, and that's all I want to do. I've traveled now. Now I want to, people can come and visit, students come and learn and experience something that I know is so rare. It's so rare, especially for last living. Okay, that's it.
All right. Right. Thank you so much. So maybe the African Studies Center will be in touch to see if there's anything we can do together in the future. Yeah.
Yeah. If the students they say, I'll be happy to come.
Yeah.
I've worked with the University of Michigan several times, and there's no reason why we shouldn't find ways to collaborate on something in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for attending. Thank you for your time.
Yes.
All right. And
Enjoy the rest of the evening.
yeah, enjoy the rest of the evening as well. All right.
Thank you. Sorry about the mishap, but we made it happen. We made it happen.
Yeah, we made it
I was
happen.
committed to make it.
All
Yes.
right. Thank you. Thank you.
You're the best. You're the best.
All right,
Thank you.
bye.
Bye.